Vader didn't just lose his limbs when he fought Obi-Wan Kenobi on Mustafar. He lost his lightsaber too. After being brought back to Coruscant and donning his black armor, Vader was forced to endure Sith training without his trusted red saber. During this time, Vader carried out clandestine missions for Darth Sidious across the galaxy, but without a lightsaber he was desperate and he struggled to defeat his enemies in combat. In one firefight with a group of clone troopers, Vader wielded the most unlikely weapon, a green lightsaber, an iconic blade from the order that he hated so much. How did he find himself desperate enough to pick up a filthy Jedi weapon in battle? And why didn't he keep it? That's today's story. In the early weeks of the Empire, nobody knew who Darth Vader was. Palpatine hadn't introduced him to the public as his second-in-command, so in the eyes of the army of the new Empire, the obviously Force-sensitive Vader was nothing more than a Jedi who had avoided Order 66. Early on, only a few weeks after donning his armor, a group of clone troopers were clearing out the Jedi outpost on Brightholme. It was a particularly laborious mission for the troopers. Assigned to detailing a horde of Jedi artifacts, including training probes, gowns, and lightsabers, it was a strong juxtaposition to the action the Legion were used to, in a conflict they had only just ended. But a certain amount of unexpected excitement was barreling their way in an Imperial shuttle. Vader, who was in the midst of his hurried Sith training under the tutelage of Darth Sidious, was stopping at nothing to become what he felt he was always meant to become: a feared Dark Lord of the Sith. On the instructions of his master, he approached Brightholme without any sign of trepidation. He had little idea of what to expect except for some procedural troopers, but it just didn't faze him. He was ready for battle. The fact his ship was unmarked meant that red flags were already waving as soon as he appeared in the midrim. Ignoring warnings of unauthorized access by the increasing number of ARC starfighters, the soon-to-be Sith Lord blasted through any and all obstacles, and literally blasted away enemies with the ship's weapon systems. The clone troopers had no idea who it was they were facing. However, it was quickly apparent that the unidentified craft they were dealing with was unlike any they had faced before. As Vader completed his arrival to the station after eliminating 4 of the armored clone fighters without taking any damage. With his ship now comfortably docked on board, the troopers scrambled to the hangar. They had seen how good of a pilot their unknown assailant was, but to them, he had yet to prove his combat skills. As they would soon learn, those skills were deadly. A resilient yet panicked group of clone troopers surrounded the entrance to the bay. Orders and anticipation flew through the air. Then, in a sudden display of Force prowess, Vader burst through. A barrage of blaster fire soon erupted with the Sith Lord in training greatly outnumbered. But it wasn't an issue for Vader. He stood fixed to the ground, using his Force powers to not only thrust troops away, but deflect blaster fire. It was a great display of Force that signaled a foe unlike any the troopers had faced before. But they soon gained an upper hand. The constant fire eventually got Vader, with a shot hitting him just above the shoulder and taking a small slice out of his new cybernetic armor. This instilled a certain degree of hope and increased effort from the clones, feeling they had their chance to fully disable the unknown and hyper-powered aggressor. However, they hadn't counted on the power of the Force, especially when a dark side user was enraged. A blast of fury and anger, Darth Vader thrust a cargo box straight through the military outfit, sending them flying like bowling pins. This gave him time to rip a lightsaber from the collection the troopers were there to collect, and quickly illuminated the room with the electric green hue. There was a slight pause. Though knowledge of the Force users was limited, the clones knew that the Jedi were currently being hunted down all across the galaxy, and most, if not all, were presumed dead. So to see a lightsaber wielder right before their eyes made them take a moment before returning to delivering blaster fire onslaught. None of this mattered to Vader. He was there to simply eliminate any obstacle in his way. Yet the fact he wielded a light side user's weapon was a bit interesting. Having only recently left the Jedi Order, his mind wasn't fully with the Sith yet, so he wanted his altercation to be over as soon as possible before any pullback to the light side was felt through the hollowed lightsaber. He trashed and slashed his way through the remaining clone troopers. The troopers gathered together and emptied their magazines at Vader, but he charged through the fire, the green blade low at his side. Bridging the gap between him and the clones, Darth Vader began to slice the nearest soldier directly across the chest. Immediately, one of the sergeants shouted that they should fall back to the interior to regroup. But Vader was too quick. With another slash, he cut through another clone, burning through his white armor. And one after the other, they all fell. Eventually, all that remained was Vader, standing above the bodies of all the clones he had killed. It was a ruthless, brutal, and violent end to the relatively short fight. And as Vader dropped the now lifeless metal lightsaber hilt onto the ground, another nail in the coffin of the former promising Jedi was hammered in. It further affirmed the fact to the sometimes conflicted Vader that there was no going back and that Sidious was right. Anakin Skywalker was dead. Soon, memory of his time as a Jedi and pride in using the light side would slip away, and there would be nothing left. With the Kyber crystals within the Jedi lightsaber essentially having been living minerals, Vader had the potential to be swayed, even in the short amount of time the battle lasted. It was a struggle that would live with him for a while, and was constantly dismissed by his master. And as we see the former Jedi Master in his now dark, black armor, we can't help but wonder what would have happened if he picked up that green blade and decided to rejoin the Order, even after all the terrible atrocities he had committed.